Well, you mentioned a couple of things in there that seem really relevant. I don't think there's one. It's not like we're going to discover this one solution that's going to overnight eliminate, but you mentioned a couple of really good things, like, our psychiatric care is really broken. you know it's there's not the funding to identify potential issues. There's not the training for parents or staff or other students to identify an issue and raise a concern. How does it get to this point, though? And even when there is something identified, what happened to SPU? He had taken himself off of his medication, which had been prescribed by the right, medical personnel. Clearly, it was needed, and he took himself off. And there's no way to. He's an adult. He's 26. He's one of the few cases. Yeah. How do we monitor that? And he was planning on taking his own life as well. We would have never known. Kind of thing. We just got. It's hard to say that we got lucky because someone still died, but it could have been much worse if somebody hadn't acted and actually stopped him from killing himself afterward. So certainly that's part of the issue. What do you guys think about gun control? What's that? About gun control? Yeah. Would you? Right. Well, I mean, one argument is, how are additional laws going to help? Because you're already breaking all kinds of laws. Murder, obviously, but bringing a gun onto school grounds is another one. Most of these are minors. They were illegally possessing the guns in the first place. They had no legal right to have that gun in their hand. That's a good question. Right. Well, most fully automatic guns are illegal anyway, but many semi-automatic rifles are pretty high power and not necessarily. I mean, we don't usually go full elephant shooting very often where we need a super high power gun. Yeah, that's good. Good question. Yeah, one of the most notoriously used in school shootings and widely popular guns is the AR-15, which is the one that was used in the Maryland High School. It's the one that looks most like a military gun. It looks most like what we see in movies, military movies, video games. What do you think the impact is on people getting desensitized based on media, allowing so much, flexibility with what they're able to share? And it's very difficult to police. My older kids have friends that come over and bring these video games, hypothetically into the house, and my 6-year-old happens to walk into the room while they're being played and is exposed to that. It's really difficult to police when they're so widely available. And what do you think? Is there anything to this idea that we're getting desensitized by media? I mean, there's the Columbine was a classic example, and others since then. Yeah. Yeah. Right, or the friends going over to their houses, which is one of my biggest concerns, because I'm we try to meet parents that our kids hang out with. We try to uh, like we don't let them drive with them until we meet them and things like that. But once they actually leave the house, it's really, I mean, kids are kids and they're gonna be kids, and how do you really control that? I mean, tell me you never did anything your parents didn't want you to do, you know? How did you know the line? That real line seems really fuzzy though to people. I mean, it's either really wide or super thin, and people step over it really easily. Because I mean, we have these kids who, a religious family from Reynolds High School. Um, People at church thought he was just a really nice kid, always came on Sunday. Kids in class thought he was quiet and he talked about guns, but didn't really have any issues. He had no record. And one day he breaks into his dad's gun safe, and takes two guns. He had a guitar. He took in a guitar case. He took the gun to school and just took the bus, rode the bus to school. His friends asked him, "What do you have in the case?" It's my stand for my uniforms. I mean, how does that happen? How does all that dialogue go on if the line should be clear? Maybe. But if he grew up around guns, I mean, if his parents had guns, it could be very commonplace. It could be like we talk about tablets and iPhones. We have so many dang devices in my house. It's crazy. Rarely do we have, just a conversation without somebody getting interrupted by a text or something, or a Snapchat or whatever. So it's really common in my place, but we don't have any guns. When I got married, I had a handgun and I got rid of it. I just didn't want it around. But if it's really commonplace, everybody's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned parents a couple of times, and certainly the gun safety issue is in question. But man, I mean, I don't know what the safety measures were in place in the house, but the authority, the local police said he bypassed the security measures in the house, whether that was picking a lock or, who knows what it was, but the education part of it can only go so far. If someone is mentally unstable to the point where they're actually planning something like this, how do we? And he was only 14, so some people say the age of accountability is around 8 or so. So once you're no longer a little kid, and we should maybe think about taking your comments seriously from the age of 8 to 14. How many opportunities do we really have to assess somebody from a psychiatric or psychological perspective and say, okay, not only have we identified that this person probably needs help, but how would we ever think that if he did need help, it would ever come to this, and at such an age of 14 years old? It just blows my mind. That was a horrible expression to erase that from my memory. It just really, it's mind-boggling that it would get to that. So yes, parental intervention. Right. But I mean, the guy who allegedly, I think we pretty much know that he was the one that had the weapon. But I mean, he said, his friends said he didn't talk about guns very much. He talked about fishing all the time. He's very enthusiastic about fishing. Rarely guns. And all of a sudden this happens. I mean, nobody really knew. He was so private that nobody really knew. Nobody knew he stopped taking his medication. Right. Chicago's a great example of that. They have very strict gun bans within the city limits, but it's one of the worst cities for gun violence. So you're saying it needs to be wider, the gun control needs to be wider spread. And I'm not saying gun control is the answer. I don't know. I just am freaked out as a parent. I mean, I didn't hear about the Oregon shooting until the day after, and I just spent yesterday just in just disbelief that something like that. Right. It's every week for the last 18 months. And right before that, there was another shooting in Oregon at a mall or something in 2012. And I mean, it just isn't stopping. It's getting worse. It's accelerating. And we do hear about it all the time and start to shut off the media, right? Because it's always so negative. And but I mean, do we need to force ourselves to not get immune to it? I mean, so we're getting desensitized by the media itself, not necessarily by video games or movies, or maybe in addition to. Right. But okay, can I play devil's advocate about that? Because yes, there clearly is something disconnected there with that person, that they're willing to think this is any sort of solution, or not even a way to solve their problems, but just an option. How do they get to the point where they think I'm going to do this, whether they think it's okay or not? They've somehow justified this in their mind. But it seems like if they really, most of the time, they're planning on killing themselves afterward. They mapped this out. He took a tour of the school grounds. He drove there the day before to check out the time of day to make sure there were going to be enough people there. I mean, this was very methodically planned out with the intention of killing himself afterward. Now it's changed. What do you think? Do you think there's any? Some people say that one of the reasons why this is becoming occurring more often is because it's a way for them to leave their mark on the world, because they know it's going to be in the media and it's going to be covered, and their name is going to be almost memorialized along with the victims. And do you think there's any truth to that? Do you think that goes through their mind and they think, okay, I'm going to do this because I will be known after my death? It's a kind of a fine line, though, because how do we know about these events? How do we try to educate ourselves about stopping them if we don't know any of the details? If none of the information is known. So where do we draw the line of learning about something, having the right to hear about something? I mean, as a parent, I think, do I homeschool my kids? Thank you for the dialogue. I appreciate it. Can I ask something of both of you separately? Will you just start one conversation with one other person you don't know about this, and hopefully we can all come together. I mean, use this as a way to tie us all together. We commit to that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Starbucks hopping, yeah. Thanks I appreciate you letting me interrupt you, and thanks.